So today, you might have guessed, we're going to have a go at making some bread. Bread making, we've done it in the past, haven't we, with a bread maker, and we're going to use again today. But it's all a bit of trial and error. It's a recipe, obviously, but it's a bit more like science because they're getting all the proportions right, and we're playing around with the weights and the measures because everything comes in cups and teaspoons and tablespoons, and so it's what we've been trying to do is get some proper measurements because it is fairly accurate, or needs to be fairly accurate. So let's start. We need, I'm using my recipe obviously, a cup of warm water. So a cup of warm water I think was 300 and something, but I've got my cup measure, so I'll go and get the cup of warm water. So we need a cup of warm water, 45 degrees, 110 Fahrenheit. We're ready to go. Got the thermometer, just about right. And then, oops, no, sugar first. So 2 tablespoons of sugar. That's my tablespoon, I think. Yep. So 1, 2. Now then, get that dissolved. And I can hear all the science teachers shouting out at me, don't stir with the thermometer. But I'm sorry. There's always do as I say, don't do as I do. But yeah, so get the sugar dissolved. The thermometer's, the temperature's right. We've found, or Daryl found on the internet, this basic white bread recipe, which we finding is better than the one that came with the bread maker. Basically, it makes sure that the yeast is active and raring to go before you start mixing. So into the water goes a teaspoon, 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. So 1, 2, 1/4. Give that, again, don't use the thermometer, I can hear you shouting, but give that a quick stir. And then this goes on the side for 10 minutes just to get the yeast working. Just try and break up a few clumps, make it try and get it evenly spread in the water. Just so that leaves, just leave that now for 10 minutes and let it get going. So the flour we're using is for bread. You really do need strong flour. This is from Aldi. It's right. I think you can get that elsewhere, but Aldi, it's not particularly expensive. I think it's 50p for a pack, and that does more than 1 loaf, obviously. And we need, what am I going to measure? Again, the recipe is 3 cups of flour, but I've got that down to about 450 grams, and so that's the flour. So you can get that prepared and weighed out while you're waiting for the yeast to activate. With oil goes in it as well, and a touch of salt, and then once you add all that in the right proportions and also in the right order for your bread mixer, then stick it in, press the button and leave it. So the yeast is frothed up nicely in the last 10 minutes. That's good to go. So 4 tablespoons of oil. We use oil. You can use butter or a mixture, but it's just easier to use the oil. And then the yeast. And the froth. That's got some yeast cells in there. Let's get a spoon. Okay, so that's there, mix in the bottom, and it's the flour. As I say, we weighed this out because we're trying to weigh out into grams rather than cups. And if I didn't use a spoon, because I'm videoing it, it would go everywhere. And then you need a teaspoon of salt. Now just make a well, because the salt and the yeast don't really want to mix. So trying to keep them separate for as long as possible. So I make a little well at the top of the flour. Put the salt in. And it's over to the bread maker. The dogs bought us this for Christmas. We did have one up in the loft somewhere, but we couldn't really find it, could we? So the dogs were very kind and bought us this for Christmas. So, right, we want large loaf. We want dark. Everything else is set. Just press go. And what I tend to do is just scrape down. I think the old bread maker we had told us to scrape down all the bits off the side while it's in this first phase of mixing, just to get everything sorted. It's just kneading the dough now. We need to shut it up. And leave it for 3 hours. We'll come back at some stage and see how it's going on. You can't see an awful lot in there now because of the condensation, because obviously it's keeping it warm. The first mix or knead is finished. Now it's rising, so we can't lift the lid anymore, otherwise it's going to affect the rise. During the first knead, you can actually lift the lid, and once all the flours and liquids mixed in, if you feel it, it just should be a little slightly tacky to the touch, not too wet, not too dry, and at that stage you can still adjust a little bit more flour, a little bit more liquid. But once it's gone past that, you just leave it alone. It will knock it back and knead it again before the process, but in 2 hours 48 minutes we should be ready for a loaf to come out. So if you have a look how it's doing, it's got another hour and a quarter to go, but it's risen nicely in there, so it's baking well, and hopefully it'll come out with a nice golden crust. We'll have to wait and see. Well, time is done, so it's time to get it out. We do find that it does go down a little bit at the, I don't know why yet, we're still practicing. So, and it is a tad warm. So it is a bit soft. We do like a crispy crust, so what we'll do, we'll just, it sounds right anyway, but we'll stick it in the oven just to bake it off, because we do like crispy crust, as I say. So that's bread. You just need to get something to eat with it. Right, so that should be about done. Yes. As I say, we like a dark crust. That sounds right. So just put it on there. Ooh, a bit warm as well. Just put it on the cooling rack, just to let any air, moisture dry off, and that's ready for tea time. Right, let's see what this. That doesn't look too bad. So. Doesn't last long, does it? Not really. So tonight's tea is toast. That's plenty done for Darryl. I like mine a little bit darker, so be mine in a little bit longer, and that'll do for me, because it's tea time. So the bread's made, the butter's made. All we need now to make a nice meal is a couple of eggs. There we go. Again, what better way? A couple of our own eggs to go with our bread. Two eggs each, one for each slice of toast. I've not perfected doing it one-handed yet. Homemade butter. with that done. So let's go and serve up. Egg on toast.
Homemade bread, homemade butter, eggs from our hens. Now there's just one thing to do, the taste test.
Nothing better than homemade bread, homemade butter, and fresh, free-range eggs from that down the garden.
Winner, winner, chicken egg dinner.
Very nice. In your opinion?
Enough said.
Well, 2 clean plates, so it must have been good, and it was. So thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.